Let's take a look at Crossan's final comment about the trees in his yard within 5 feet overnight. He says he wouldn't immediately presume a miracle. Well, neither would we, because most events actually do have a natural explanation, which incidentally helps miracles stand out when they do occur. So it makes perfect sense to seek a natural explanation first. But does that mean that we should never conclude that any event, such as the trees meeting, was a miracle? Crossan would not so conclude because of his theological presupposition that God does not work that way. Since that presupposition is unjustified because God exists, what would be the right conclusion? It depends on the context of the event. Recall from chapter 5 that evidence must be interpreted in the light of the context in which it is found. So let's suppose that Crossan's tree moving event occurred in the following context. 200 years in advance, someone claiming to be a prophet of God writes down a prediction that all the trees in one area of Jerusalem will be moved 5 feet one night during a particular year. 200 years later, a man arrives to tell the townspeople that tree moving will occur. This man claims to be God, teaches profound truths, and performs many other unusual acts that appear to be miracles. Then one morning, numerous eyewitnesses claimed that the trees in Crossan's Jerusalem yard, including several deep-rooted 100-foot oaks, actually moved 5 feet during the night, just as the God-man predicted. These eyewitnesses also say that it was just one of more than 30 miracles performed by this God-man. They then suffered persecution and martyrdom for proclaiming these truths and for refusing to recant their testimony. Opponents of the God-man don't deny the evidence about the trees or the other miracles, but offer natural explanations that have numerous fatal flaws. Many years later, after all the eyewitnesses are dead, skeptics offer additional natural explanations that prove to be fatally flawed as well. In fact, for the next 1900 years, skeptics try to explain that event naturally, but no one can. Even in that context, wouldn't it be reasonable to assume that the movement of the trees was supernatural rather than natural in origin? Of course, the context makes all the difference. This is the case we have with the resurrection. It's not just that we lack a natural explanation for the empty tomb, it's that we have positive eyewitness and corroborating circumstantial evidence for the resurrection miracle. Here's the context in which we must evaluate the evidence. 1. The theistic nature of the universe makes miracles possible. We live in a theistic universe where miracles are possible. Indeed, the greatest miracle of all, creation of the universe out of nothing, has already occurred. So God can use prophets to announce his messages and miracles to confirm them. That is, a miracle can be used to confirm the word of God through a man of God to the people of God. 2. Ancient documents say that miracles are to be expected. The Old Testament documents written hundreds of years in advance that predict that the Messiah, a man who would actually be killed at a specific time as a sacrifice for sinful humanity and rise from the dead. More on this in the next chapter.
Okay. Anybody want to pick up here and go to 320, extraordinary claims and self-evidence? Oh, no.
Or is it just extraordinary evidence?
Yeah, so from on 318, number 3, on the roll, number 3, to next big part, extraordinary claims and self-evidence. Okay, so we got
There are 27 documents written by 9 eyewitnesses or their contemporaries that describe numerous miraculous events. Many of these documents contain historically confirmed eyewitness testimony that goes back to the time of the events, and the evidence demonstrates that the narrative is not invented, embellished, or the product of deception. We know this because the New Testament documents meet all 7 tests of historicity identified in chapter 9. The New Testament documents are early, most written 15 to 40 years later, well within 2 generations of the events, contain eyewitness testimony, contain independent eyewitness testimony from multiple sources, are written by trustworthy people who taught and lived by the highest standard of ethics and who died for their testimony, describe events, locations, and individuals corroborated by archaeology and other writers, describe some events that enemies tacitly admit are true, enemy attestation, describe events and details that are embarrassing to the authors and even to Jesus himself. These historically confirmed eyewitness documents tell the following story. At the time and place, and in the manner predicted by the Old Testament, Jesus arrives in Jerusalem and claims to be the Messiah. He teaches profound truths and, according to numerous independent eyewitnesses, performs 35 miracles, some on groups of people, and rises from the dead. Once cowardly and unbelieving eyewitnesses suddenly begin to boldly proclaim Jesus' resurrection and faith in persecution. Misguided people may die for a lie that is true, but they will not die for a lie they know is a lie. The New Testament writers were in a position to know the real truth about the resurrection. In the very city of Jesus' death and tomb, a new movement, the church, is born and quickly spreads by peaceful means on the belief that Jesus is risen from the dead. This is difficult to explain if there was no resurrection. How could Christianity begin in a hostile city like Jerusalem if Jesus' body was still in the tomb? The hostile religious and government authorities would have exposed Christianity as fraudulent by exposing the body. Thousands of Jerusalem Jews, including Pharisee priests, abandon five of their most treasured beliefs and practices and adopt strange new ones after converting to Christianity. Saul, the most ardent enemy of the new church, is suddenly converted and becomes the most prolific prophet. He travels the ancient word to proclaim the resurrection, suffering persecution and martyrdom. If there is no resurrection, then why did the greatest enemy of Christianity suddenly become its greatest leader? Why did he willingly suffer persecution and death? James, the skeptical brother of Jesus, suddenly becomes convinced that his brother is the Son of God, and then becomes the leader of the church in Jerusalem. He later suffers martyrdom at the hands of the high priest. We all know that family members can be the most difficult people to convince to our religious views. James began as the unconvinced brother of Jesus, John 7:5. If there is no resurrection, then why did James, who is called the just by 2nd century historians Clement and Josephus, suddenly come to believe that his brother was really the Messiah? Unless he saw the resurrected Christ, why would James become the leader of the church in Jerusalem and suffer a martyr's death? The Jewish enemies of Christianity don't deny the evidence, but offer faulty, naturalistic explanations to account for it. I keep reading. Additional confirmation. The collective references of other ancient historians and writers confirm this basic storyline of the New Testament documents, and several archaeologic discoveries affirm the details those documents describe. When you put the evidence in proper context, you can see why we don't have enough faith to be skeptical about it. It's a lot more reasonable to be skeptical about skepticism. Skeptics who look at points 2 to 4 above, including the subpoints, may conclude that Jesus did not rise from the dead. But if they do, they've got to provide evidence for an alternative theory that can account for all of these points. As we've seen, they have failed, and failed miserably. The resurrection verse explains all of the evidence. Since there's a God who can act, there can be acts of God. When God's intention is announced in advance, and you then have a good eyewitness testimony and corroborating evidence that such events actually occurred, it takes a lot more faith to deny those events.
Yeah, it isn't just that you can say Jesus didn't rise from the dead. You have to account for the fact that everyone said the body was missing. So how do we do that? And how does a skeptic do that? And they can't, as we've already talked about. Okay. Extraordinary claims and self-canceling evidence up until self-canceling miracles. Thank you.
There are two more objections that skeptics often bring up against the resurrection of miracles. The first one is a demand for extraordinary evidence. Extraordinary evidence. Some skeptics might admit that the resurrection is possible, but they say it would require extraordinary evidence. That is, since the New Testament makes extraordinary claims, such as miracles, we must have extraordinary evidence in order to believe these claims. This objection seems reasonable until you ask, what does extraordinary mean? If it means beyond the natural, then the skeptic is asking the resurrection to be confirmed by a miracle. How could that work? In order to believe that in the first miracle, the skeptic would then need a second miracle to support it. He would then demand a third miracle to support the second, and this would go on to infinity. So by this criteria, the skeptic would never believe in the resurrection even if it happens. There's something wrong with the standard of proof that makes it impossible for you to believe what actually has occurred. Extraordinary means repeatable, as in a laboratory. There's no event from history can be believed, because historical events cannot be repeated. The believability of historical events can only be confirmed by looking at the quality of the eyewitness evidence and the nature of the forensic evidence in the light of the principles of uniformity and causality. Besides, atheists who demand repeatability for miracles are inconsistent because they do not demand repeatability of historical miracles in which they believe. The Big Bang, spontaneous generation of first life, and macroevolution of subsequent life. If extraordinary means more than usual, then that's exactly what we have to support the resurrection. We have more eyewitness documents and earlier eyewitness documents for the resurrection than for anything else from the ancient world. Moreover, these documents include more historical details that have been corroborated by more independent and external sources than anything else from the ancient world. As we've just reviewed, we also have more than usual circumstantial evidence supporting the resurrection. Finally, the skeptic's presupposition can be challenged. We don't need extraordinary evidence to believe something. Atheists affirm from their own worldview. They believe in the Big Bang not because they have extraordinary evidence for it, but because there is good evidence that the universe exploded into being out of nothing. Good evidence is all you need to believe something. However, atheists don't even have good evidence for some of their own precious beliefs. For example, atheists believe in spontaneous generation and macroevolution on faith alone. We say faith alone because, as we saw in chapters 5 and 6, there's not only little or no evidence for spontaneous generation and macroevolution, but there's strong evidence against those possibilities. Furthermore, skeptics don't demand extraordinary evidence for other extraordinary events from history. For example, few events from ancient history are more extraordinary than the accomplishments of Alexander the Great. Despite living only 33 years, Alexander achieved unparalleled success. He conquered much of the civilized world at the time, from Greece, east to India, and south to Egypt. Yet how do we know this about Alexander? We have no sources from his lifetime or soon after his death. We have only fragments of two works from about 100 years after his death. The truth is, we base virtually everything we know about the extraordinary life of Alexander the Great on historians who wrote 300 to 500 years after his death. In light of the robust evidence for the life of Christ, anyone who doubts Christ's historicity should also doubt the historicity of Alexander the Great. In fact, to be consistent, such a skeptic would have to doubt all of ancient history. Skeptics demand extraordinary evidence for the life of Christ, not the life of Alexander the Great, because they're hung up on miracles. Despite the fact that miracles are possible because God exists, and despite the fact that miracles are predicted, then witnessed, skeptics can't bear to admit that miracles have actually occurred, so they set the bar for believability too high. It's as if some skeptics are saying, I won't believe in miracles because I haven't seen one. If the resurrected Jesus were to appear to me, then I would believe it. That would be extraordinary. It certainly would be extraordinary. But is it really necessary? Does Jesus have to appear to every person in the world to make his claims credible? Why would he? We don't have to witness every event firsthand in order to believe the event actually occurred. In fact, it would be physically impossible to do so. We believe the testimony of others if they are trustworthy individuals, and especially if their testimony is corroborated by other data. This is exactly the case with the testimony of the New Testament writers. Furthermore, as we pointed out in chapter 8, if God were to prefer it because of frequent miraculous displays, then he might, in some cases, infringe on our free will. The purpose of this life is to allow us to make choices that will prepare us for eternity, and God will give us evidence, but not compelling evidence of his existence and purposes. Therefore, those who want to follow God can do so with confidence, and those who do not can suppress or ignore the evidence and live as if he didn't exist.
Who wants to finish this out? Thank you, Nell.
The great skeptic David argued that miracles cannot affirm any one religion because miracles are based on all religions have. In other words, most strong refute his objection is not declare what actually is. By saying that alleged miracles from all religions are what others need to deny. The eyewitness is unrivaled in any other religion. That is, no other world religion can verify the second, these objections prior to the discovery of the divine reject only such small theories, or rely on absolute physical laws. In fact, no contemporary literature even claims to be able to know the 100% success. God offers
Keep going.
in the beginning of chapter 9, we said there are two questions we need to answer. We have accurate copies of the original documents that were written around the first century. As we said in the last workshop, the evidence is strong. In other words, at this point, we are not saying that this is out there. Let's see. Not convinced we can one more piece of corroboration. That is often titled non-solitary. He is living in upstate village, child, and another apartment shop.
Itinerary.
He never wrote a book, he never held an office, he never had a family around him, he never went to college, he did none of the things he is only 33, quiet in the public. Privileges and needs nothing down to a college. When he was sad, he was like, 20 centuries have come and gone. Today, he March. All the that has everything, all the parallel.
Okay, so now let's turn in your little atheist books, and first we'll do equip 10 and engage 1 that we did yesterday. So equip 10 says, despite the attempts made by skeptics to use alternative theories to refute Jesus' death and resurrection, what are some strategic ways you can put the burden of proof back on them?
I said that so they have absolutely no proof of their theories because they see it off of what could have happened. Whereas Christianity actually has witnesses and evidence in a book that says this is exactly what happened. So they're saying that we need more evidence, but they don't have any evidence.
Right. So you could ask, so what first century evidence do you have for the body being stolen? What first century evidence do you have that he didn't actually die? What first century? Because that's the level of proof, right? We have first century evidence of a resurrection. So they need to match that. And then you could ask, can you offer a plausible alternative? And whatever they tell you, whether that's he didn't really die or there was someone else on the cross, you now know easily how to refute those things, and not just refute those alternate theories, but also give the proof for an actual resurrection. And then engage 1, which is also based on what we read earlier. Review the debate between Craig and Crossan on pages 315 and 316, so you may want to turn there. What was Dr. Craig's strategy in the debate, and what did it reveal about Dr. Clausen as a result? So what was his strategy? Yes.
I think originally it was intended to have him tell how much evidence he needs to believe the resurrection, and then give him that amount of evidence. But then it kind of worked better than he thought because he just admitted that he doesn't accept miracles.
Yeah, as a
Like admitted and accepted.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
That's
specifically Moses'
right. And he did that by asking questions, right? He asked him questions. That is a very effective way to talk to somebody because it isn't as in your face. Well, know that he resurrected because this and this and this. So, what do you think happened? What evidence do you have for that? I'd like to hear that. And so his strategy was to ask questions that would lead to an admission of bias. And it did. It led to an admission of bias. It's because that's what he wants to believe. It's like the kid that knows in his or her heart there is no Santa Claus, but he just thought this was me. Like I wanted to believe this. And
Wait, what?
what? I'm sorry. I'll write your mom. You know your 17-year-old son. Did William Lane Craig, and I love to sing his name, did he berate Clausen? He was kind, right? He was forthright. He wasn't a milk gentleman. But he never mistreated. You do not have to get into an argument to talk about these things. Please don't get into an argument. He simply asked questions, which is more, it is less off-putting than making statements, trying to just strong and so, as you've already mentioned, that led to Clausen ultimately admitting that no matter the event, he wouldn't believe because he has a preconceived prior commitment to naturalism. So there's nothing that could change his mind. And once that happens, all you can do is that person is because they're not in a place where they're willing to. And pray that God puts them in situations that cause them.
These trees actually move 5 feet.
Yeah, that it really did. They really did. Okay, question 2. How would you go about discussing miracles in their proper context with a skeptic? So this is a fill in the blank. So you can find this on pages 316 to 320. So it says the blank of the universe makes miracles blank. So be what?
Theistic nature of the universe makes
Yes. So the theistic nature of the universe, something we've already proven, makes miracles possible. If there is an all-powerful God that created the universe, he can do whatever he wants with that universe.
I was going to say, Clausen's view on miracles is very
Okay. Number 2, what does it say? Yes.
ancient documents say miracles are to be.
Ancient documents say miracles are to be expected, and they were prophesied, right? That with Jesus there would be miracles. So we have proof, ancient proof, to expect miracles. I say amen. So number 3.
Historically confirmed eyewitness documents say miracles are actual.
Yeah, so historically confirmed eyewitness documents say miracles are actual. Miracles like the resurrection of Christ, but also miracles that we see throughout the New Testament. Not just the miracles of Jesus, but the miracles of the early church as well. And then 4 is an additional confirmation. So outside sources that say the same thing, and archaeology that tells the story and corroborates the story. Number 3, how would you go about responding to a skeptic who says that they need extraordinary evidence in order to believe an extraordinary event like the resurrection? Yes.
And you'll never be convinced because if you want extraordinary evidence for something already extraordinary, then it'll just keep repeating because then you need evidence for that extraordinary evidence, so on and so forth. So it's unrealistic to think that you
Right, it's a, you know, I don't know if you guys remember this. This is a song that never ends. It just goes on, and I might bring it up some memories of friends, and it's just, it goes all on and on and on. It's an endless cycle. So, yeah, exactly. How can you confirm a miracle with a miracle? You wouldn't believe it because it's a miracle. And it's a kind of a catch-22.
They want extraordinary evidence for an extraordinary event. What about the origin of life? What about macroevolution? What about the beginning of the universe?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, God created, and we have evidence for this as well. God created the universe out of nothing, and the greatest miracle of all. Right? Nothing comes from nothing. Nothing ever could. I know that's true because it's in the Sound of Music. But it is true. Nothing comes from nothing. Nothing ever could, except the. Anybody else? Number 4, how would you respond to a skeptic who says that miracles cannot affirm any one religion over another because all religions profess to have them? I'm not sure that's a type of Buddhism. But anyway, doesn't matter. Yeah.
Because the miracles of Christ did, there's not necessarily things happening to me, but all the same,
Yeah. They're making an assumption that all miracle claims are false and that all miracle, everybody makes them, so none of them can be right. But just because everyone in this class is about to take a quiz doesn't mean that they're all going to make mistakes on it. Right? It doesn't. It isn't logically sound.
It's like if one person actually had a flat tire on the way to school and everyone else was just really late, but they all said the excuse, sorry, I had a flat tire on the way to school. There would be the guy who actually did.
Yeah.
It's fair.
So not all miracle claims are alike. There is ample proof. I hate it. There's ample proof of the theistic universe, and that means that not all many miracles are possible, but we should expect. So the New Testament miracles are abundant and have attestation. They've been attested to, and by outside sources. And then we read One Solitary Life on page 324. Why do you think that Jesus is the most influential
Because if what he preached is true, then he's the only person in history that actually matters. And also, again, if we assume that it's true, his influence would have been, guided by God. So it shouldn't be a surprise. Actually, the fact that he's so popular should prove the fact that he was sent from God.
Yeah, it's not like he was Alexander the Great, or he was, Caesar. He was someone who the whole world knew. He never left Palestine. Now, the people that followed him took it to the whole world. But his life, other than the miracles, was rather mundane. He was a carpenter. So he didn't leave, but the country that he was born and raised in, ostensibly. So, yeah, it doesn't make sense that storyline would end up with the most famous person. Yes.
He is literally the only one in history where they like sure Hitler, yeah, he killed but that's not every time.
Well, life or death is eternal life or death. Yes.
There's other religious figures like Jesus that claim to be able to save you, or that if you don't follow their teachings, then you'll end up dead or in hell. But they're not really, obviously, religion. It's just not the same.
But where is the early testimony?
It's not there.
It's not there. There's not the wealth of testimony, but in any other religion. Okay, do you have any questions? Okay, that's it for today. Your quiz is on Friday. You have your study guide. If you don't have a study guide, you need to come get one. And it is also on Teams.